Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's November 28th, 2022. We're in the New Testament, and we're reading out of the book of John, and we're going to read chapter 18, verse 28 to 19:16. Okay, so John just told us about this fake sham kangaroo court trial that the Sanhedrin ran Jesus through, where they basically violated every tenet of their own law to declare that Jesus was guilty of something, and he had to be put to death. Problem is that the Jews weren't allowed to actually put someone to death. They had to, because the Romans were in charge, they had to take him to the Romans first. And Jesus had predicted that he was going to die, be lifted up. So that's crucifixion. So if the Jews didn't have to go to the Romans, they would have put him to death by stoning him. So by going to the Romans, that fulfills the prophecy that he's going to be crucified. That set that part into motion. Jews condemned him. The Roman Gentiles decided the manner that he was going to die. The person that decided that was Pilate. When the Jews bring Jesus to Pilate, well, they have nothing that he really charged him for, so they just said, hey, you know what, here he is, go kill him for us. And Pilate said, okay, what's the charge? Hey, we just brought him here, go kill him for us. And Pilate says, no, let me talk to him for a little bit. And he talks to Jesus, and he decides that Jesus is innocent. And he takes several steps to try and let Jesus go. He even asks the Jews, hey, you know what, if it's the Passover and I'm supposed to let somebody go for you, who will it be? How about this Jesus guy? There's nothing really wrong with him. No, give us the guy who actually led a revolt, who's actually the criminal, who's actually guilty of the crime that we're trying to have Jesus crucified for. Pilate ends up having Jesus flogged, and that's probably not being whipped with scorpions and cat o' nine tails like we always pictured Jesus being whipped, because at that point Pontius Pilate hadn't decided to have him declared guilty yet. He's still thinking he's going to let him go, so basically just has him whipped. They put a crown of thorns on his head and drag it down and smack him around. They're trying to humiliate him and beat him up, basically, so that Pontius can bring out Jesus, who's bloodied and bruised and humiliated, and say, okay, look, I punished him enough, haven't I? Can I let him go now? But the Jews say, no, we want him crucified. And in fact, the Jews realize, hey, you know what? There's one thing that'll make Pilate do what we want. Hey, you know what? You let him go, we're going to tell Caesar that you let a guy go who was talking bad about Caesar. And then Caesar's going to come after you, Pontius Pilate, and kill you. And Pontius Pilate says, okay, let's crucify him. So then he hands him over to his soldiers. That's probably when the actual whipping with the cat o' nine tails would have occurred as part of the crucifixion, and that's what we get to tomorrow. So let's go ahead and we're going to read John chapter 18, verse 28 to 19:16. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They did not enter the headquarters themselves, otherwise they would be defiled and unable to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and said, what charge do you bring against this man? They answered him, if this man weren't a criminal, we wouldn't have handed him over to you. Pilate told them, you take him and judge him according to your law. It's not legal for us to put anyone to death, the Jews declared. They said this is so that Jesus' words might be fulfilled, indicating what kind of death he was going to die. Then Pilate went back into the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me? I am not a Jew, am I? Pilate replied. Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done? My kingdom is not of this world, said Jesus. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. You are a king then, Pilate asked. You say that I am a king, Jesus replied. I was born for this, and I have come into the world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. What is truth? Said Pilate. After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, I find no grounds for charging him. You have a custom that I release one prisoner to you at Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? They shouted back, no, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a revolutionary. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers also twisted together a crown of thorns, put it on his head, and clothed him in a purple robe. And they kept coming up to him and saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And were slapping his face. Pilate went outside again and said to them, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know I found no grounds for charging him." Then Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and the temple servants saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" Pilate responded, "Take him and crucify him yourself, since I find no grounds for charging him." "We have a law," the Jews replied to him, "and according to that law he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this statement, he was more afraid than ever. He went back into the headquarters and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus did not give him an answer. So Pilate said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you know that I have the authority to release you and the authority to crucify you?" "You would have no authority over me at all," Jesus answered him, "if it hadn't been given to you from above. This is why the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." From that moment, Pilate kept trying to release him, but the Jews shouted, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside. He sat down on the judge's seat in a place called the Stone Pavement, but in Aramaic, Gabbatha. It was the preparation day for the Passover, and it was about noon. Then he told the Jews, "Here is your king." They shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Should I crucify your king?" "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered. Then he handed him over to be crucified, and they took Jesus away. May God bless the reading of his word. May God bless you. Bye.